Hello, this is Sybil Harmony. We are living through an unprecedented time in history, a time that is shaping all of humanity, not just politics in America, but the whole world. We are living through a spiritual shift and an awakening, and we are starting to see on mainstream media some truth of that. Many of us have known who have been practicing our awakening and consciousness of love, forgiveness, kindness, have known this for a long time, for many lifetimes. I've talked about in my other videos that I remember past lives where I've gone back and lived through times like this, the same scenario. No mistake that a lot of movies have the good guys and the bad guys and saving the world, because that's been a theme here on Earth for millennia, for worlds. I'm going to talk about this lifetime a little bit more. When I was growing up, my mother ended up divorcing and then marrying the brother of Maya Angelou, who I wasn't very close to, but my mother marched in Women for Peace. She did outreach in prisons and in underprivileged school areas. My mother actually came from a very wealthy family who were members of secret societies back then, which are now even more hidden. So I don't really want to talk about them, nor am I going to get into that here. But that's just a part of my history. So the reason I'm explaining this to you is because we're having a repeat of the 60s this summer, the summer of love, the summer of 25. This is more like the summer of power to the people. And so anyway, my mother, I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated. I remember when Kennedy was assassinated and how distraught and upset she was. And she taught us about all of this, and our schools were integrated. I didn't understand prejudice when people talked about it. It didn't make sense to me because I never grew up in and around that. But I did grow up. I was very young, and my mother was kind of an artist and a bohemian. Bohemians were before the hippies. Okay, so we were already entering the time. By the time I was very young, 11. Okay, we were entering maybe even 9 and 10. We were entering the beginning of the summer of the time where we called out for peace in Vietnam and power to the people. And so my mother didn't know. I would sneak out of the house and go pretty much wherever I wanted to. My Maya Angelou's brother, who was my stepfather at that time, actually tried to corral me in and protect me and come and like, you can't telling my mother, you can't take her off the street. You got leave her on the street with all these protests happening. But I would sneak out anyway because they weren't paying that much attention. And I was involved in People's Park in Berkeley and in the Vietnam protests. And part of it was just because all my friends were doing it and it was cool. And so I was, kind of indoctrinated by family and my community. But also it really resonated with me because not so much when it's the time of sex, drugs, and love, but not so much. Well, I did, those are other stories that I got into trouble with or was abused with. So there were things about that time, but the summer of love resonated with me, and what they were talking about resonated with me in my soul because I resonate with love and compassion. I remember thinking as a young girl that I wanted to help people or help the world or love a child the way I didn't feel that I was loved and taken care of. And so I didn't know that that would later turn out to be my job. I'm that's what I do. I practice awakening. I help people. I've had an awakening process. I help people through their awakening processes. And so I recently, I don't know whether this, I used to do spiritual and political. This is both. I recently predicted that the election that Susan Crawford would win, and she won last night. I recently predicted that Musk would be leaving, and that was just announced. So we are seeing the beginnings of power coming back to the people, away from the oligarchy, away from the hidden secret societies. My mother was actually disinherited and ostracized from the family because she married a Black man. I remember we used to go back to the country club at the Shainersville Inn, and no Blacks were allowed. And so we as a family said, well, then none of us are coming. And that took it was about 5 to 7 years till they somehow reconciled, and we were able to go back. And my brother, who is half Black, that's why we couldn't go, because my mother's husband, well, he was never invited back there because that would have been a little bit too much. But they had a child who was mixed race, and my brother was not allowed to the country club at the Shainersville Inn in Pennsylvania. So that changed after about 5 to 7 years. They reconciled, and but I do remember the protests. I remember the tear gas and the shooting at Kent State, and the music and the energy, and a lot of us souls that came in for those protests saw what they did in Atlantis. Atlantis was a world before ours. Yes, there are many worlds, and what was really the truth about what has happened that secret societies know, and the Vatican or whoever, they know all this stuff, but they don't teach that in school because they want to make you afraid or disempower you. So the most important thing is to know who you are. That is your power. And that's what I teach also. I empower people by teaching them who they are. So anyway, I know who I am, and I've done past life regressions, and I remembered past lives as a child. And so this past life in Atlantis, what happened was a small group of people that wanted to steal all the power, that were mean and cruel and violent and warlike, blew it up and caused a huge earthquake and floods. Okay. So when we reincarnated again, and reincarnation is known in many traditions, Buddhist, Hindu, but it was taken out of the Bible. So Catholics and Christians aren't taught about reincarnation. That's a whole nother video and story. Okay. So I remember that, and many souls, even though you don't consciously remember, if you were in Atlantis, you remember on a soul level, or you made a soul agreement, which we forget when we come into physical body. You made a soul agreement to come in to this planet to assist during this time of awakening. So many of us were born. After that, many starseeds came in. Many of the Atlanteans were born, and they ended up, some in Hawaii, some in New York and East Coast, but most of them ended up in California. So we had San Francisco, the flower power, city of love, or what's it called again? I can't remember. So we came in with this soul mission. And even though you don't consciously always remember your soul mission, there's something in your heart and in your soul and in your being that just feels like, this is right. I'm going to do this. I know this. And that's part of your soul mission. People always ask me in my readings I do, why am I here? What's my purpose? It's that thing that you're driven in your heart and your soul to do that just feels right. Or you meet somebody and you're just like, I love them and I barely even know them, and So, because that's somebody you have karma with. Hopefully it's a twin soul, not it could be a soulmate. Soulmates are cool. Soulmates will teach you about love. But anyway, that's a whole nother video too. Okay. So, I remember the summer of love and the civil rights. Now, I wasn't down in the South where they were fighting for civil rights, but that whole generation, we changed the world. We changed America, and we are back again. And we are doing, and it is time. You saw Cory Booker up there. Kudos to him. That was amazing what he did, staying up for 25 hours. And you could see he was in pain. And he was talking about getting into good trouble like John Lewis. And that's what we need to do, because these people, this small percent of people, now it's not all Republicans or Democrats. It's not about that. And it isn't really about people that voted for 45, because a lot of them, I feel like, were tricked, or they didn't really know, or they just wanted groceries to be lower. They're, because what's been happening over generations is this small percent of oligarchs have been draining secretly behind the scenes. Like, where did all the money go? How did all the costs get higher and our wages got lower? And then they tell people propaganda to try to brainwash them, to make them afraid, to make them hate other people. It's time to stop hating our neighbors. If you are listening to somebody who's talking about hating and blaming other people, you're listening to the wrong message. There is enough. There's no reason for war, except, of course, if you're protecting yourself from, a bully. We have to do that. But there is no reason for the bully. There is enough for everyone. It's greed and power. They're power hungry. And it's something innate in some of these people's souls, are just very dark. This is very powerful, the energy we're coming up against. But there is more of us, and love will win. Love will win, and we can do this. And so it's time for us to get out and speak out. Do everything you can. Call your congressperson. Call your local people. Tell them you appreciate what they're doing, or you don't like what they're doing. Donate. Be of service. Say prayers. There's something that everyone can do. Go out and march. I may even do it again. Peacefully protest. Maybe civil disobedience. Good trouble. It is time for good trouble. And we can do this. We are the generation, we are the people here that ahead of the future, they will look back, that came back to reclaim our world for love, for the benefit of all, and for the environment, for animals, for the environment, which I'm very strongly connected to, but that's another lifetime from Lemuria. Okay, so thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe, it really helps me. And I usually put these out, spiritual videos, every Thursday. This was a little bit of a mix of political. I do, it's a little bit of a mix, but it was time to mix it up. All right, take care. Sending you so much love. We're all in this together.